coming up in the show this morning, the Office of National Security will be speaking on concerns over the use of marshals as security for politicians. Right, our quote for today says, "We cannot turn the clock back, nor can we undo the harm caused, but we have the power to determine the future and to ensure that what happened never happens again."
And that quote comes from Paul Kagame, a Rwandan politician and former military leader. He is the 6th and current president of Rwanda. This is Wake Up Sterling on AYV Television and Radio 101.7 FM. Don't forget to drop your comments and questions on the issues we're discussing this morning. Drop them on our Facebook page at Africa Young Voices Media Empire.
The Office of National Security and the Versailles Police met with political parties yesterday to address the unregulated use of marshals by political parties and some of their aspiring candidates. The statement released by the Office of the President said the activities of these marshals have most times not only caused violent confrontations between rival camps within the same political party, but also opposing political parties, leading to destruction of properties and in some cases loss of lives. So this morning, to discuss this issue, we've been joined in the studio by Alhaji Marcos Bangura, who is the Executive Director for Democracy Sierra Leone, and Lawrence Williams, media and social analyst. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Right, let's start off with you, Marcos. Yesterday, the Office of the President issued a statement that, politicians should not depend on marshals for their security, rather the Sierra Leone police. But with the current trend and the loss of confidence, especially by opposition politicians in the Sierra Leone police, what do you make of that call?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, as a matter of fact, because it is a fact that the police are responsible for security in whatever circumstances. But over time, a lot of people, especially political parties, have lost that deep-rooted trust in the police. So as a result of that, they decided that they should have their own marshals, or in other words, their own security, internal security. Of course, if we look at it in a very broad perspective, it is glaring that the marshals sometimes create problems. But we should not turn blind eyes and deaf ears to the fact that they also play a very important role. Because even within political parties, they play the role of controlling members, especially when they are out, say on rallies and other things. Then also, because of the mistrust, sometimes they may want to protect their leaders. But in a general perspective, the police is established by the central government through an act of parliament to maintain law and order and to provide security for the people. And there is no provision in the Constitution to say that the political party should form marshals. The blame should not only be shifted on the marshals themselves. We have to look at other apparatus in societies to see that they too have a role to play. For example, the police themselves. Let me start with the police.
Go ahead.
The police have a very important role to play. They are an integral part of the electoral management body. So as a result of that, when it comes to elections, they have a role to play. But when sometimes they fail to perform their functions, there are glaring evidences of police committing omission. That is to say, failing to perform their role at a time when they should do it. Like, I think the election at Godrich, constituency 110, we've seen the situation wherein people went haywire, went berserk, and started destroying ballot boxes and sensitive electoral materials. And the police were right there. They did little or nothing to salvage the situation. So when these things reach that particular point, most times people will have distrust for the police. And even the ONS that actually came out with this particular press release, right? The ONS also have a role to play. They play a very important role in the security sector, right? And as a result of that, they are also part and parcel of the electoral management body. And when there is a conflict in a particular place, say electoral conflict, then those who have committed serious offenses are left to go, unabated. It's like giving them impunity, you understand? You have committed a serious offense. And the ONS, in collaboration with the police, should have actually take drastic measures to ensure that this particular act is not repeated. But when they fail to do so, there is the proclivity that other political parties may not shy away from having their own security force. So in essence, you're saying the failure of Sierra Leone police to provide adequate security for opposition politicians is what is warranting those politicians to build up their own security. It's a major factor. In the first place, when the ONS or the Office of the President came out with this particular view that the issue of marshals, say for example, should be banned, did they take into consideration of the fact that the police will have the capacity to provide adequate security? That is one thing, first of all, that we should take into consideration. It is their own role. It is their own responsibility, right? But can they provide the security? So once the police are able to provide the security, there is no need for us to have marshals. But you look at the issue of trust, understand, confidence, right? And when we talk about elections generally and electoral security, we should take three things into consideration. First of all, we have to look at the pre-election activities, you understand? Election day activity and also post-election day activity, right? Security should be provided throughout because in the period marching towards election, there is always altercation. There is always political rivalry between political parties, you understand? So it is a responsibility for me, as far as I'm concerned, for the security sector to ensure that they came up with security measures, that is to say, legal frameworks that will regulate political behavior. And where they fail to come out with that, there is tendency, for chaos to occur. And even when they have decided that, okay, let's put measures in place, once these measures have been put in place, it's not only to put measures in place, but it is for them to make sure that they are efficacious, understand, to put them into effect. You look at that, you try to put modalities in place. Say 18 months to election, understand, because that is the time, we have a lot of political activities. So you begin to regulate. You try to create a system wherein there will be consistent communication between political parties. Because tolerance is a very important issue when we political tolerance, when we talk in terms of good governance, right? But where political tolerance is absent, understand, as we have seen over the years, there is all tendency for chaos to occur.
Right.
So in as much as we have the police providing the security, and one will not say that sometimes the marshals don't create problems. They create problems. But we should not only limit the problems created by the marshals. We should go beyond that. That's why I mentioned the police. I mentioned...
I'll come to you shortly to make a submission as to whether or not marshals should be banned. But let me bring... I mean, if we're going to ban them, then... but let me bring in Lawrence. We've arguably, it appears there is no specific law regulating the conduct of political parties in Sierra Leone. And by default, the police is always with the regime of the day. Be it APC, be it SLPP, it has always been attributed. It has always been that way according to many arguments that have been advanced. Do you now see this particular statement by coming from the Office of the President that political parties should forget about using marshals for their security and depend on the Sierra Leone police because that's their fundamental duty, I mean, in the sovereign states of ours, Sierra Leone?
Let me start by stating whether the actions of political parties regarding the mobilization, organization of marshals is legal, legitimate, and moral. To start with, we have the Political Parties Registration Commission, which is mandated by an act of parliament to regulate the conduct of political parties. And there is no specific provision in that law that actually bans political parties from establishing any army on their own. And we have the Police Act of 1964 and the Constitution as well, which establishes the Sierra Leone Police Force as for being responsible, charge them with the responsibility to maintain internal security. We also have the Republic of Sierra Leone Armed Forces. These are the legitimate state institutions who are responsible for providing, overseeing security within and around the borders of Sierra Leone. So no political party or individual has the mandate by law to establish an army on its own. Now, as to whether it is legitimate, there have been concerns, and rightly so, as you pointed out, that the party government of the day would always use the police or the security apparatus to oppress, repress opposition members. It started way back in the days of Shaka Probin Stevens. And if you read Bound to Cooperate, Conflict, People and Peace in Sierra Leone, it establishes the facts chronologically of how Shaka Stevens, right down to Momo, to the MPIC regime, to the Tijankaba government, used the security state apparatus to actually clamp down on opposition and dissident voices. And in some instances during the Sheki days, it led to the formation of the Dogbousus, for example, who were formed to protect, a particular region, Pujon district to be precise, and of course a particular tribe from the repressive and oppressive manner in which the Stevens government treated the opposition strongholds. And so there has been that concern. Even in the last government, there were concerns raised by the current party in governance. The SLPP raised concerns of how legitimate concerns about the APC government using state security apparatus to suppress, intimidate, harass them. And in this current dispensation, similar thing is happening. So their opposition members would always have the apprehension that the government of the day or the security apparatus cannot be trusted fully and solely to provide them with the adequate security. And so they would always mobilize their own marshals. Because mind you, security is a very complex and critical issue. Even AYV would not employ a security guard that cannot be trusted, that, the institution doesn't have confidence in. So these are all factors that come into play considering whether or not political parties and individuals should employ marshals. For me, the question is, what has been the activities of these marshals and how they have been involved or indulged in violence acts?
But Marcos also raised a good point. If marshals are to be banned, if marshals are not going to be used to protect political parties and their candidates and whatnot, do the police have the capacity to provide adequate security to these political parties?
I think that question, should be directed to the police. But in the meantime, we've seen instances that could probably justify why political parties do employ marshals. Yeah? And for me, it's not about the marshals. It's about those who form the marshals. It's about the political godfathers who mobilized these marshals. Generally speaking, they would tell you that, oh, these are my boys. They're here to provide me with security and blah, blah, blah. But these guys are normally, occasionally, often used to perpetrate violence against political opponents, even within, the intra-party settings. You see contenders or aspirants for various positions within the same political party having their own marshals. And when there is time for probably conventions or internal party politics, you see them, clamping against each other. We've seen that demonstrated in the SLPP during the days of Sheikh Sumano Kapen, Chief Sumano Kapen. We saw the level of violence that erupted between and among members of the party when KKY came in and wanted to contest for the flag bearer position. We saw all what happened, yeah? Even within and among the members of the APC as well. And when there were about 28 camps or so, yes, when they went to Makeni, things were, but before going to Makeni, there were lots, a series of concerns regarding violence that erupted in various places.
But
yeah?
let me ask this question. How different would it be if these political parties, or say, for instance, candidates, aspiring candidates in these political parties, had their own individual security apparatus, but they're members of the police? How different would it be?
Now, there was a time when, in the last dispensation, when intra-party violence became very, very serious, and to the point that the election management bodies requested or asked political parties to disband every marshals that were situated in their party offices. There were thugs housed in various political party offices who prevented other aspirants, probably those, from entering party offices and things like that. So they asked them. That instruction was not complied with. The concern is, for me, particular, it's not about the marshals, but there should be somebody to, bear the greatest responsibility. If I am the head of the army, for example, I am the head of the marshals, I form the marshals, they are here to protect me. I should take responsibility for whatever actions they engaged in. So the question has always been whether the security apparatus, particularly the police responsible for internal security, has the impetus to prosecute, to charge, investigate, and prosecute, political heavyweights who normally go with thugs in elections, by-elections, or what have you, to perpetrate violence against opponents and disrupt elections and all of that stuff. If you take a look at National Elections Watch press releases for the past 10 years, the last 10 years, they have always been consistent in pointing out one particular fact, that the presence of high political party stalwarts and their accompanying thugs create or constitute a very, what should I say, constitute, a threat to the peaceful conduct of elections. And under this dispensation, in all elections conducted, by-elections and what have you, almost all, we have witnessed continued increase of violence, and of course, the new has pointed or identified individuals who led thugs into those elections to disrupt the process. There has not been any instance where the police has investigated those individuals, charge and prosecute them. So the police probably don't have the wherewithal, should I say, the independence to perform its functions, especially so when ruling party officials are involved. And it does not stop with this regime. It has been a continued practice over the years. But if the security apparatus has now woken up to the challenge and are willing, ready to actually confront this menace, definitely I think they have the power and wherewithal to do so. But again, the political apparatus regulate the security apparatus. The Internal Affairs Ministry probably could give orders or instructions to police officers. We've witnessed situations where ministers will order police officers to do XYZ. We witnessed how the former lands minister was instructing, security apparatus to beat people up, to do this, to do that, and all, to harass, intimidate people. Even when it comes to elections, he is one individual who was identified by the National Elections Watch to have went with thugs to Constituency 110 rerun by elections.
Right.
In all of those circumstances, in all of those instances, nothing has been done. So the security apparatus, as much as they are now willing or saying that marshals should be banned, for me, let's look at those who bear the greatest responsibility. And let's go back to reviewing the political parties registration act.
Let's bring Abdul Karim Will into the conversation. Abdul Karim Will, who is the Public Relations Officer for the Office of National Security. Go ahead, Abdul Karim.
Yes, thank you very much. Martialism itself is an informal arrangement. And like I stated, when it came into being, it was like thought of as playing a kind of a complementary role to that of the police. But sadly, elections in and out over the period, we've seen that the role, the reason for which they were established, tacitly given sort of approval to exist. We have now witnessed a situation where they are moving away, they are veering away from that kind of a responsibility of crowd control within the political parties where they belong. The business of providing for security for any political party or party leadership is the responsibility of the Sierra Leone police. And like I've stated, marshals came into the equation to serve as a kind of a support to complement the role of the police, and exclusively that was to provide for crowd control within their political parties, not actually to perform state security functions. What we're now saying, what we're now witnessing is that kind of a situation where marshals are becoming a law unto themselves. There have been a lot of destructions, a lot of skirmishes, a lot of intimidation. Like somebody mentioned, both at intra and inter-party level. Let us not shy away from the fact that the Sierra Leone police is the responsible agency for the provision of security for the country. And the issue of trust or capacity and that kind of thing, most often it is just people insinuating. Have we actually asked for the provision of security for a particular function and that is denied? Have we actually seen a situation where the police will clash against themselves? For example, we are saying that marshals across political lines will have the propensity of attacking each other. That will not be the case if you have police deployment in Party A and Party B. So, while we have come up with this decision, our intelligence estimate, our analysis, clearly indicates that if we do not put a stop onto martialism, we are opening a very sad chapter. And as an early warning agency, institution, we will not sit idly by and allow this to thrive. Martialism, it's difficult even to regulate it because there is no law that gives that establishment. I'm sure all responsible political parties, be they big, small, or whatever, are concerned with the activities of marshals within the political parties. We've just mentioned that there have been situations where very decent Sierra Leoneans who are working towards the development of the country are being subjected to molestation within their political parties, are being subjected to intimidation and all what have you. And let us don't forget that the choosing of those people who lead us goes a long way to determine the type of development we'll have. If you have a situation where we intimidate all of these people who actually have very good things to offer to the country by way in which we conduct ourselves through the use of martial, through the use of thugs within political parties, then that's not a good thing. elections should be decent context. In several parts of the world, especially advanced nations, elections are normal activities. There could be elections today, schools will run, people will go to their marketplaces, people will do all other business normally. But in Sierra Leone, it's almost becoming a kind of a law that whenever there is an election, almost everything comes to a halt. And that is bad. We are a nascent democracy. But in even age, we have been able to make a lot of inroads as indicated by reports both at international and local levels. We have seen that the electoral management bodies are working tirelessly to ensure that those aspects that will give credibility to elections are being put into the equation. We will not allow the aspect of martialism to erode all of the sources.
All right, so you met with political parties yesterday. So what was the outcome of the meeting? What was their contribution or their concerns?
There were lots of feelings around the tables, mixed ones. Some political parties, most political parties in fact, hugely support the role of the Office of National Security and Security Sector to put a stop onto martialism. A few other political parties were of the opinion that rather than us putting a ban, we should regulate. But the question is, how do you regulate an informal grouping of that nature? How do you actually regulate? To whom will they be accountable? My brother was mentioning the aspect of the leadership bearing the greatest responsibility. That will be given too much onto the leaders. Because these people that are constituted and considered as marshals are ones that could come from any grouping, from any social background. And most often, they do not go through any kind of a recruitment or formal process. So if you now say that if a marshal commits atrocity A or B, you go back to fall on the political leadership, then that will be something that will bring chaos into the equation. So to resolve the problem, just stop their existence. We've seen lives being lost as a result of the activities of marshals. Most often, the marshals use these kinds of opportunities to settle personal scores. And for all you know, some of these reasons for which they go into clashes are little but not related to any political interest.
Abdul Karim, from what you're saying, someone would just say that you only called the political parties to then inform them of the decision of ONS, because if I'm pretty sure it's the bigger parties, maybe the APC, the NGC, that would have kicked against banning marshals. Correct. That would have kicked against banning marshals. Not likely
so.
Okay. Were their inputs taken into consideration? Because from what you're saying, they said let's regulate them, and you cannot regulate.
So I stated that a few political parties were of the view that we could regulate them. We had well over 11 political parties in the room, and out of those, we only had about 2 that were asking for marshals to be regulated.
Can you name them?
No, I will not want to begin to call names, but I want to tell you that bigger political parties were of the view that we are in the right step. And so if you want to take majority, then we were in the majority in terms of our opinion. The fact is, even those that were saying that we should regulate were not oblivious of the fact that the activities of marshals are ones that are inimical to the very security of the
Can I ask you this question? Your principal role, is to coordinate the security sector and serve as principal advisor to the government, to the president. Let's now look at in the previous 2 multi-tier national elections we've had. The major political parties who definitely you would want to tick as one of them winning the presidency, be the APC and the SLPP. When the SLPP was in opposition, the SLPP used marshals. Very, very well so. They were well dressed, and the SLPP depended on those marshals for security because they felt at the time the state cannot provide adequate security for them. They could not trust the state. And when the APC is in opposition, they now have marshals because they feel like the state cannot provide adequate security for them and they cannot depend on the state. That is to say, when political parties form government, they control the security sector. Whether legally or by default, you have the vice president as chair of the council of the police board. You have the minister of internal affairs serving as the secretary general. So you have the most powerful people heading the police council as politicians. So how then do you, how are you asking now those opposition politicians to believe in Versailles police when by default the police itself is politicized?
Supervision is different from regulation. There are laws, there are structures that guide the conduct of the security forces, the police, the RSLAF, Office of National Security, and what have you. And most often it's just out of insinuation that people begin to think that it is this particular leadership that is regulating. It is just speculation, when in actual fact it is not the case. Every police officer, every security officer has a responsibility to perform a duty to serve the country. And in serving the country, you have to do so with your conscience and mindful of the fact that you are going to be accountable for your actions. I want to tell you that it is not only people in opposition that use marshals. Far from the fact. Most often, whether a political party is in power or in opposition, they always have. It's almost becoming a kind of a norm. It's almost becoming a kind of culture. Much to the extent that sometimes they even ignore the role of the state security. And when you do so, you embolden young people who have little or no knowledge in security to perform that particular role. And when that becomes a case, they could take a lot of advantages because they are not accountable to the state. They could either be accountable to individuals. But when that becomes a case, if it now becomes a kind of a law and you want to prosecute this sort of people, it becomes difficult because you may not even have where to draw from what establishes these people, what it is that is their mandate. So it is all of these dilemmas that we want to eradicate by saying, let us test, let us see how we can, regulate the conduct of political parties by first stopping the existence of marshals within political parties.
So what alternative is the ONS proposing if you're banning the operations of marshals?
The alternative is, in fact, that should be our priority, the Sierra Leone police. Most often, it is first the police that comes into the picture. But if it's one that requires additional support, we will call on the military. That's why sometimes in major elections, mass gatherings, we either evoke MACP to ensure that the military comes in support of the SRP. If we do not rely, if we do not trust on state security, trust me, the marshals will not be able to provide that security for any political party or any political leadership. Because there have been situations where those people who actually provide a kind of a support or security to political party leaders, but when once they fall foul with them, when they fall in terms of a relationship with them, they go back after them. That will not be the case with police officers, because police officers will be deployed according to the dictates of the state, according to the dictates of the event. And for most of the time, it is the marshal that will even bring more chaos into a situation that does not actually warrant any kind of violence, because they want to be seen to perform a role. They want to actually loom large. They want to actually tell the political parties that we are here for you and we are this, because they have something that they are looking for. For the police, it is their responsibility. It is that for which they are being paid for. So providing you security at party level, at individual level, or at occasion level comes with nothing, because they are not looking for any accolades. They are not looking for any.
Let's get real, Abdul Karim. Just quickly, forgive me. Let's get real. We've seen instances where government officials or ex-officials who are supposed to enjoy security from the state based on their position, the state has withdrawn security from them. And some are left with no option but to recruit individuals to secure them, to provide security for themselves. And the state in that position cannot and has already told those guys that we cannot provide security for you anymore because you are no more a former vice president, because you are no more a minister of this or that. So how then do you want people like that to depend on the state for security? When the APC was in power, there was Leather Boots. Very tough. His name was pronounced all over this country where in any issue of violence. You have in the current SLPP, you have the likes of Arata, the Benghazi boys. These are things that are very, very much bold within the state. And what has the ONS been doing to ensure that you regulate things like that, or you ban them? Like you said, martialism came into Sierra Leone, into politics about a decade ago. What have you been doing?
So I started by stating that we thought their role could complement the role of the regular security forces, particularly the police.
And you got it wrong.
But going forward, we noticed that they were veering away from that function. And so, given our estimation, going forward, we thought that from our experience in the country's civil war, and in other countries, this is how militarism starts. If you allow them to breed and actually hold ground, we've noticed also that most of these people who constitute the marshals are either former police officers or ex-military officers, or people that have fought in our country's war. Is that what we want to have? Is that what we want to nurture again? Because we've seen it as a problem, and that if we do not nip it in the bud, it's going to overwhelm us. That's why we are saying what we are doing is in support of political parties. It's actually to bring sanity within their realm. Let them rely on the police. We have the capacity, we have the capability. Do not assume for us. Sometimes provision of security to individual and state actors is one that will be demand driven. It's one that will be informed by certain situations. In the meeting yesterday, a senior national party official considered that yes, there was a time when he was having threats around his vicinity. He requested from the police for the provision of security, and that was done. Sometimes, some people do not even want to have too much security details because it brings you into the limelight for no reason. So, it is not that anybody wants to withdraw security from Samuel Bangura because we want to expose Samuel Bangura onto danger. If we've established that if you are without security, your life is at threat, your family is at threat, and that kind of a thing, and you so demand that I will provide you security, that is what will be.
And if you are with security personnel and the security personnel are withdrawn from you, what informs that particular decision? Say, for example, in the case of Chief Samuel Sam Sumana, that saga was all over. Say with the case of the former president, Dr. Ernest Bai Koroma Makeni. Let's speak to those issues and see what's come into play, the things that come into play from the ONS to make decisions like that.
You mentioned two different situations. His Excellency, the former president, the state security was not withdrawn. We all know that it was change of personnel. that was the case. And I want to tell you that even for the others that you've alluded to, it could be a reduction. It could be as a result of an intelligence estimate that you had 25 security details around you. We'll now leave you with 5 because we think that's what you could. So all of these dynamics come into place and they inform those sort of decisions. Nobody, no sane security player will want to expose the life of state functionaries onto danger. Because we know that if our country is to develop, it is these people that are at the steering wheel. Whether they are in opposition, where they are in they have remote chances of winning elections. But these are opinion leaders that will decide what obtains in our society. So that's the situation.
Right. Okay. We have messages that we should go through, but it's fast approaching 9 a.m., which we'll definitely have to go for a news summary and come back. But before then, Marcus, you've listened to the submissions from Abdul Karim Will in regards to the threats these marshals pose to the security of the state, and if measures are not taken to actually prevent those threats, then they have the propensity of sending this country into unrest. And with the things he has mentioned, what do you think?
Thank you very much. I agree with him to some extent that the police is the main institution established by government or by an act of parliament to provide security. And that marshals are not part and parcel of the security apparatus in this country. So as a result of that, let's say they should be banned. But again, let's look at the theoretical aspect of it as well as the practical aspect of it. Theoretically, the police are charged with the responsibility of providing security. But in practice, empirical evidences have shown that the police have failed on several occasions to actually provide that adequate security. By virtue of the fact that it is their responsibility, in theory we can say, yes, it is their mandate. But in practice now, we've seen situations. For example, let's go to Constituency 110. Who were at the polling station when situation degenerated into chaos, when ballot boxes were destroyed. The same police we are talking about that have the responsibility of providing security as the Constitution provided, they were there. They did little or nothing to salvage that situation, right? And again, we've seen situations quite recently, except for the first election, that is by-election that occurred in Bond. But apart from that, most of the elections, by-elections, that have been conducted, we've seen that they have been marred with violence, wherein the police themselves fail to perform their role. We know we've lost life at Cambia, and that action was actually done by the police. And that notwithstanding, that's why initially I mentioned that if we are talking about an electoral conflicting and security, the ONS themselves should not be exempted. They are also an integral part of the crisis. Because let's say, even if we have marshals or certain individuals have committed, an offense, say they have killed, you understand, or they have assaulted certain individuals, the ONS, by virtue of the fact that it is at the peak of the provision of security in the state, what role have they played to actually ensure that these individuals are brought to book?
Right. We'll come to Abgaim to answer that question.
Yes. Welcome back to Wake Up Sierra Leone on AYV Television and Radio 101.7 FM. We still continue the conversation on the unregulated use of marshals by political parties and their aspiring candidates. We still have with us Abdul Karim Will, who is the Public Relations Officer for the Office of National Security, and we have Marcus Bangura and Lawrence Williams, who are both media analysts.
Right.
Taking some messages from Facebook.
Yes, Aman Sakroma is saying, yes, he's right, just like how the police and ONS failed us when Leather Boots and APC folks attacked SLPP office in 2007. And he's saying, under the leadership of President Bio, we have an impartial force. Ronald George Stone is saying, the standard rules in close protection are not being followed, like the general man mentioned. The party big men will say, they are my boys, so how can you follow rules when they don't exist or are not followed? We leaders them not value salon laws, then they only quote the law where it can to protect themselves. Madam Fofana is saying, these sorts of arrangements cost money. It's the police going to pay for every event these political parties are holding. Have they got the resources and many people to do so during electioneering process? Osam Mansokabo, Rahim Chamsila is saying the Sierra Leone police had been used and still used by the government of the day. You all remembered when Dr. Yum Keller returned home to pursue his political ambitions and the then APC government arrested his bodyguards and they were remanded at Pademba Road Correctional Center with further accusations. We all know how the current president was moving around prior to 2018 elections with people in partly military uniforms. The evidence is there. Guys, we just need one form of security in a country, that is those from the state. Parallel security is a recipe to future chaos, either inter or intra level. Edward Amara is saying, since the security sector is controlled by government of the day, there is absolute need for marshals. Kamara Wamad. Ronald is saying the police never has the independence to pursue criminal charges, especially against a ruling government when they are found wanting of breaking laws, but can arrest the opposition in a swift moment again by both successive governments. Don't we all know this? Or are we burying our heads in sand? Mystic Duazaki saying ONS should stop imitating politicians by stopping them not to use private marshals or intimidating. They are to use. There are many security lapses in the security they need to address instead of stopping private marshals. I see nothing wrong for politicians to use their own private marshals. There is nothing wrong with political parties providing their own security as long as they are working directly with the police directives and instructions. I see no harm in that. Hassan Kabo is saying, let me take at most 5 more messages. The messages are so many. Since the SLPP came to power, how many cases have been investigated so far? There lies a problem. Ronald is saying, if marshals are to be banned, then the security sector should be independent. One might say, Patrick Rui is saying, having marshals is great. The only issue, they should not be acting as the police, but crowd controlling only. And obviously you can have a close protection team which has to be registered and abide by the rules stipulated by the state, but the police have the overall responsibility of protecting lives and properties for its citizens. Abdullah Kamara is saying, Lawrence, to say the police don't have the independence is understatement. Nothing stops the police to carry out its constitutional responsibility. The police just lacks the courage to execute its functions. And I'm afraid, finally, Paul Kaivik Bayo is saying, if marshals think they are above the law, let the ONS dissolve marshals and let's give police via independence in order to serve us well. From 2021, interesting. House Smiths are winner in Toronto, Canada. The 2021 House Smiths winner. All right. Interesting. The campaign has started, but we have to hold the messages there and allow you guys to respond to them. I'll start off with you, Lawrence.
Yeah, when I spoke of the police not lacking the independence, I mean, the independence of the police has been something that has well been hindered over the years. I mean, I was basically referring or stating the obvious that the police are usually or normally or often constrained due to political influence from performing their stated functions. And let me reference one situation, the Shegbema by-election in which Kamarimba of the ADP contested during the days of the APC, yeah? And at some point he came under attack. He was left at the mercy of his pursuers or attackers. And that was why his marshals and some others mobilized themselves, you know, in order to protect him. They had to use this stun gun and whatnot. Yeah. And later he was then arrested for being in possession of a stun gun. Yeah. So, I mean, there has always been a concern. And would you say that this, the opposition, the main opposition, APC, will have trust and confidence in the Sierra Leone police to provide them with the adequate security after what happened in their party office, after the wrongful prosecution of Paulo Conte for treason, and all of those instances that have actually given rise to serious interpolitical tensions between these two political parties. If the security apparatus is really serious, is actually serious and wants to confront this menace with honesty, sincerity, and patriotism, let them start off by investigating the death, the gruesome murder of that young man in Kailaun recently. Let them start off with that investigation.
I was just about to go to that in constituency 010.
010, yes. Let them start off with that investigation. That's a gruesome murder. He was stabbed to death, and nobody claims responsibility, and nothing could be done. We are now faced with a situation where by elections, or should I say elections normally, I mean, people treat it, oh, it is a do or die affair. Whether we kill somebody or not, nothing will happen to us. Let somebody, if nobody takes responsibility, nobody claims responsibility, it is the mandate of the police to investigate, charge, and prosecute offenders of such heinous crimes. So if they are actually serious, let them start off with that. That's the most recent gruesome murder in elections in this country.
Right. Abdul Karim, do you have a response to that? We've seen situations where police are witnesses to violent conducts. We've seen instances where police are witnesses to, in this case, murder. And we haven't heard any investigations being done or seen any investigations being done. Yet, what you're proposing here is that the security of these individuals or political parties are left in the hands of the police.
I wish to start by stating that no election, no matter how big or small, is important than the life of any Sierra Leonean. The incident in Kailaun could be one of the triggers, one of the boiling point that has led us to put a stop onto the existence of martialism. What happened in Kailaun and in some other places are things that are very, very much despicable. And I want to take this opportunity to send my condolences to the bereaved family and to assure the public that the Sierra Leone police is investigating that matter. It's not that nothing is being done. It's a murder, for God's sake. And where the evidence points at, those people will be brought to book and will be dealt with according to the laws of the land. We just mentioned that, yes, somebody in the text messages that marshals could be allowed to thrive as long as they do not behave like the police. How do we tell that if we allow them to exist, they will not behave like the police, as they are already doing? The stabbings, the destruction, the attacks against political party opponents or people within political parties are not being done by the state security because they have little or no interest apart from they providing security for Sierra Leone. But for the marshals, it is about their livelihood. It's about them projecting themselves as people that are worthy of being given positions in the event of an election's victory. So, quite honestly, we should not shy away from the fact that what we are contending with has a propensity of bringing
I don't think the argument here is that the marshals do not condone violence or perpetuate violence themselves. But the question here is, will the police be any better?
I just stated earlier on that prior to the existence of marshals, it was the Sierra Leone police. And even for some of the allusions that we are making about elections, violence happening there, and little or nothing being done, whether they were marshals or what have you, it is still the responsibility of the police. It's not the responsibility of marshals to say, provide security for ballot boxes, guide NEC officials. No. the reason for their formation is to ensure they control crowd in mass gatherings within their political parties. Going away from that is usurping the powers of state security. And that's what they have been doing. They parade themselves, they stop people to move about where they are actually supposed to be going, where it is not them that should determine the routing. And what is even ironical is that most often the violent confrontation will actually happen within political parties. And it is that deep within political parties that you find it difficult to understand why that's the case. Because within political parties, there are more at stake than it is across political party lines. Because for somebody within a political party, he or she knows that if I eliminate or I suppress the chances of this candidate, then it's going to be me, either becoming a honorable or a minister or that influential person. So we have to trust the police. It is easy to cast aspersion. It's easy to blame the police. But that is what we have been established for. Holding the baton to regulate is one that is difficult beyond human comprehension. But most often, when you do not hold the baton, you think it's an easy game. So most often, it is us blaming the police. It's us blaming the security forces for either inaction or overaction. Sometimes we are caught in the middle as to whether to act or not to act. Because sometimes, again, when you act, it's the same public that is asking you to act that will accuse you of being excessive in the discharge of your duty. So it is a case of managing the balance. I have stated that all police officers, all security officers are accountable to the laws of the land. No police officer, no ONS personnel, no military officer is above the laws of Sierra Leone.
Let's give it. The police is independent, but is ONS committed to improving the independence of the Sierra Leone police?
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
That's why whatever we do it collaboratively.
All right.
We consult. For the meeting yesterday that led to the decision to put a ban on the existence of marshals, it was consultative. We have had a lot of security engagement. Now we brought in political parties to tell them that we want to help you. We are concerned about development within your political parties. And we think that one of the triggers to violence in your political parties is as a result of this existence of marshals. So let us put a stop.
Thank you, Abdul Karim. Marcos, as we round up, what will be your closing submission?
Yeah, it is important for us to note that the police is very important, and there is a need for us to have one security, apparatus to actually take care of election or to provide security generally, right? But the only issue is not that of having the police as the major or the only security body in Sierra Leone. Now, if I can reflect to history, this use of police and the military by state officials did not even start with Shaka Stevens. It started in 1967. During that particular election, Albert Magai stationed military and police officers in every polling station. And through that, a lot of opposition members were actually ostracized. And we should not lose sight of the fact that the same still exists. So in as much as we have the police force, the constitutional body responsible for that, let us not also turn eyebrows on the role played by the marshals. Martialization started for some time, for quite too long. That is the martialization of political parties. It is because of distrust. It is because of suspicion on the side of the police. If only we can have a police that is fair enough, a police force that can perform. In terms of independence, one may question the independence of the police. When you look at the barriers around the police, right? Even when you look at the ONS, that is why I will never, exempt the ONS from the crises that have been happening because of the fact that they have a role to play. I ask a question as to whether ONS and the police have actually prosecuted certain individuals. They may investigate. No one will say that the police have not investigated. It's not about the investigation. The role of the police, one, is to investigate crimes, to provide adequate security. That's their role. So where they fail to do so, there is the proclivity for individuals to shed eyebrows on the police. So that is why ONS has a role to play to ensure that they mold and shape the police to be fitted. You know, we are not in the jungle. We are is survival of the fittest, and among the fittest, the most fittest of the fittest survive. We have a police force, and that police force should play a role. We look at the ONS, the composition of the ONS. When it comes to decision making, or when it comes to, say for example, electoral security provision, right? I want to believe that there is a need for marshals to be regulated, because according to their press release, they say they are unregulated, meaning that if they are regulated, it will be fine for the conduct of general elections, because we are looking at it, the minority should not be seen as being ostracized. You may meet and take a decision, but once you take a decision, the minority should not be seen to be ostracized, because that is their own view. And that is what democracy says, and as far as good governance is concerned, we take that into deep consideration.
Thank you.
So as a result of that, in as much as I may support us having the police force alone, but again, let's question the sincerity of them and whether they should provide, whether they have the capacity to provide adequate security for the general good of all.
Thank you.
And Lawrence?
Yeah, like I said, the police is constrained due to political influence to provide the required security. Again, marshals commit acts of violence and crimes to the satisfaction and pleasure of their godfathers, their political godfathers. These political godfathers finance, mobilize, and organize these marshals. So they bear the greatest responsibility. This is the actual issue. Let us bring it on floor and have honest discussions around it. People feel that it's too sensitive to talk about. I'm telling you, those boys take instructions and orders from their political godfathers. So if something goes wrong, they should bear the greatest responsibility. Charles Taylor was not here, he was not physically present in Sierra Leone, but he aided and abetted the commissioning of heinous crimes, and therefore he was prosecuted. So if one talk about marshal and what's not, let all the political big guns, New has been identifying those individuals in the last 3 years. Yeah, New has been identifying all of those individuals in their press releases. What stops the police from prosecuting or investigating those individuals? What stops the police from inviting them for questioning?
Thank you very much, Lawrence Williams, Alhaji Marcus Bangura, and Abdul Karim Will. It's been a pleasure talking to all three of you gentlemen.